Hi, this is Molly Ryder, and you're listening to More Milk, Please, baby feeding stories from moms like me and you. This podcast is designed to be a safe space for moms to come together and share their real life baby feeding stories. From breastfeeding and pumping to tube feeding, formula, and weaning, we hear it all. By moms worldwide, willing to share some of their most nerve wracking and intimate moments. I'm excited you're here, and my hope is that you find connection and belonging. Today, I'm interviewing a very dear friend and fellow mama, Carla. She and I go way back. We met in college, and it's just so exciting that we're having babies at the same time. Yay. Especially since we're older mamas. So,
Yes.
anyway, hi, Carla. Welcome to More Milk, Please, and thank you for being here today.
Hi, Molly. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a treat and an honor to be able to share my story with you and everyone else who's listening. So thank you.
Yay, so excited. Thank you. Well, I'm hoping that you can start off by sharing a little bit about you and your family, like where you live and just a little bit about you.
Of course, yes. So my husband and I live in Rochester, New York. We got married in 2022 and got pregnant right away. Where we
Yay.
were we were lucky that that happened so quickly because again we're on the I'll call it the older mamas, so I was able to have my daughter, who is now 7 months old as of yesterday. She just turned 7 months old when I was 39, so I squeezed it in right before I turned 40. Which was very exciting. So
Yay. And how old is she now? She's 6 months, 7 months?
7 months old. Yes, 7 months as of yesterday. So she was born on February 24th, and yesterday was September 24th. So
Yay.
yep,
Oh,
7 months old. We can get into this more later, but she was 5 weeks early. So a lot of times I'm always thinking about her corrected age. That's a term that I'll use and hear a lot. So that's really
yeah.
like when she was supposed to be born. So she was 5 weeks early. So instead of 7 months old, she's actually 5 months old and 3 weeks. So you
Wow.
subtract 5 weeks, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And you met your husband during COVID, right?
I did. Yes. Actually, we met right before COVID.
Right.
So we were one of the lucky ones that got to hunker down together and spend all those endless days of not knowing what's going on in the world together. But the timing worked out really well for us. I think we
That's
had
awesome.
about probably 3 or 4 dates, and then the whole entire world closed down. So yes, a pretty unique story, or maybe not unique, because I'm sure other people were in that same kind of boat, but it was very special for us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. I love your story.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I know you already gave us a little bit of a sneak preview, but before you had birth, I'd love to hear a little bit about your maternity experience and more specifically, like what your knowledge was around breastfeeding, baby feeding. Did you research the heck out of it, avoid it, consider formula, nervous, excited, any of the above?
Yeah, all the things, so many emotions. I think, first off, just being pregnant, like there's so much that goes through your head, and you're reading things and you're not reading things because you don't know what you want to believe, and you go down a rabbit hole, and it's like it's so much information. So um I did research a little bit. I knew I wanted to breastfeed as opposed to formula feed. That was my goal. And it's funny how what you're thinking about doing and then what ends up happening ultimately because of your situation. And so I did research it a little bit. I didn't research it an intense amount, but I think I knew enough going into it, or at least I thought I knew enough.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't take any classes on breastfeeding. We did take a labor and delivery class.
Mm.
My husband and I did, which was helpful. We learned a couple things here and there, and I know they had a breastfeeding class that was offered, and I don't know if we just never got there or we never signed up, but either way, we never did any like formal training in that way. So I think I was more of just like, we're gonna figure this out as it happens and as we go along. And several of my friends have children, and so they had shared bits and pieces, which is interesting because you never really know, looking on the other side of it now until you experience it yourself, how different or how challenging or how I don't know, everyone's experience is just so unique. So even though hearing stories from my friends, it, never the same until you do it yourself. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It feels like such an abstract thing. And
Oh
so
yes.
it's really not until like you're in the middle of it trying it that it like lands. So I
Right.
hear you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like, wait a minute, I'm feeding a child on my breast. Like how is this even, how is this baby growing? How is this happening? And it happens.
Yeah. 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 It's crazy. All right. So let's dig in a little bit more. And if you can
Okay.
share a bit about the moment like leading up to birth and what that whole experience was like.
Sure. Yeah. So I have as everyone does, has a unique story. And I hope people don't have a similar story because my story was a little bit, um, I would use the word traumatic. I think I'm still kind of processing everything that I went through. As I mentioned, my daughter, her name's Ariana. She came 5 weeks early exactly. But when I was, let's see, I was 34 weeks and 3 days. I had what we now know, which didn't know at the time, is a placental abruption. So basically, your placenta says, I'm all set, I'm all done, I'm not doing this anymore. Jokingly, but really, it starts to tear away. And so one evening or early morning, I woke up to pee because that's something that I did often in the middle of the night.
Right.
And I saw lots of blood, and that was
Mm,
whoa, a big kind of the big alarm, something you don't want to see ever, right, when you're pregnant because it's just sounds all the alarms. And I actually stayed relatively calm, which I was impressed with myself because I'm
yeah.
usually not. I'm usually like an anxious person. And I called my husband. I said, Dan, this is not right. So we called the emergency line for our OBGYN, and the doctor said, you need to come in and so we can, see what's going on. So we actually had our hospital bag packed. We just packed it that
Oh,
Sunday, and this
wow.
was
That's impressive.
yeah. Well, that was one of the things that class taught us. So we were like, okay,
Nice.
we're ready. We got our hospital bag. It wasn't completely ready, but we threw a couple things here and there in there, but we were set to go. And I remember my husband said, should I take my laptop with me? I'm not going to take it. We'll be back. And I said, just put it in your bag,
Yeah.
good thing because, long story short, we never left the hospital. But yeah, so we drove, kind of in silence. I felt the baby kicking though. So I was like, okay, she's doing okay.
Yeah.
Um, so we got there and I was in triage for a bit and they decided to keep me overnight and just do some monitoring testing. And so it was a couple days of just, testing here and there and monitoring. And
Yeah.
again,
And were
long
you
story.
continuing to bleed or had that
Um,
stopped?
no, the bleeding stopped actually. They did some
Nice.
swabs and the bleeding
Yeah.
stopped. I think I was there 3 hours. And then at that point, we thought we were going home. My husband
Right.
was saying, what do you want me to cook you for breakfast? And I said, I'll work from
Oh.
home today. I won't go in the office. And when they say we're going to keep you overnight or, for 24 hours, we said, okay, maybe we're not going home. We're like, this is great practice when we come back.
Right.
Um, and again, I think my husband is incredibly calm. Like our personalities, are opposite in some ways, which is amazing because he keeps me calm and I'm more of like the anxious one. And it was just amazing to have him by my side because the whole time, he was there, he was reassuring that everything's gonna be okay. And I feel very comfortable with the hospital system that I was delivering in and the system in general here in Rochester where we live. And so I was happy. I felt that once I was at the hospital, I felt safe in the sense where even if I had to have an emergency C-section or something happen, I felt that, I would be in good hands. So that was reassuring. Yeah, so, I won't go into all the ups and downs of all those next couple days, but basically what happened was I wanted to keep the baby inside as long as possible, right? Because she was little and it was early. And so we decided if we could wait till Friday, it was Tuesday when I went in, she'd be 35 weeks.
Hmm.
And that would be a milestone. Like, if we could
Yeah.
do that, there was a rule there that if the baby was born before 35 weeks, they had to stay at the NICU for an extended amount of time. And so I said, if we could just get to 35, that's the goal. So we certainly had some scares those days. Her heart was decelerating because of the placental abruption, which again, we weren't really sure what was going on at the time. And so I
Did they
would do
know that right away or did they just know that something was off?
they knew something was off. I was monitored the whole time.
Hmm.
Her heart, the baby's heart was monitored. I was monitored.
Yeah.
And I think 3 different times throughout those days, her heart would go down significantly enough where an alarm would go off and they would come in and they would say, Carla, flip on your left side, flip on your right side,
Oh,
do cat
interesting.
cow. Oh yeah, I was doing yoga poses on the bed.
Yeah.
There was one incident that her heart didn't come up. It was like 6 or 7 minutes. And I was like, in my head, like saying prayers and, but again, I'm in
Yeah.
this place and we're close. They told me they put me in the room closest to the operating room in case I had an emergency C-section. I'm like, oh, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, there was that one time that it was very close and then her heart did come back up. And that was, I think, like Wednesday or Thursday night before we were planning for the Friday. So it's okay, we can do this one more day, we can get through this. And then the ultimate plan was on Friday, to be induced with
Hmm.
Pitocin. And if the baby could tolerate Pitocin, we would try to have a vaginal birth. And if she couldn't right away, we would know if her heart was going down. Again, it would be an emergency C-section. So, um, yeah, those days are all a blur to me. I mean, they're not a blur in the sense where I know what happened overall, but all the little details are
Yeah.
just like, wow, it's incredible that we're here and, I'm safe, she's safe. We're all in this wonderful
Yeah.
place, but it was definitely not I would never wish anyone to have to go through that kind of experience because it is, again, it's traumatic. And I know that I think I'll be processing it for a while just because
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where you never expect anything like that to happen. But we have faith and we're, just grateful and so happy
Yeah.
that it all turned out okay. So that's a very long answer to your question, Molly. But
No,
um,
yeah. So how long after the Pitocin was she born?
so they started the Pitocin around 9 o'clock in the morning, and she was born at 9:30 p.m. Um, that evening. So it was about 12 and a half hours of labor. So it was progressing though. There was no like stalling out, and
Yeah.
I had an epidural within a couple hours. I think I waited a little bit too long, but that's okay. Looking back, I should have asked for that epidural a little bit sooner, but
Yeah.
um yeah, so she was born that evening and didn't have to have a C-section at all. So I was grateful for that, just, recovery
Amazing.
wise. Yeah, so that was one thing that we were very blessed because a lot of times when placental abruptions happen, it's more of like an emergency C-section and that you have no option to even try to have a vaginal birth. So yeah,
Right.
so we were able to hold her.
Yeah.
We were told that the NICU doctors would be there, when she was born. And so we were able to be with her for, it wasn't a long time until they did take her to the NICU, but it was just amazing that we were able to, be with her. And she weighed 4 pounds and 14 ounces. So
Wow.
very, very little peanut. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. But almost 5 pounds. That's so
Almost
great.
5 pounds. Yes. I mean, that's pretty good for being as early as she was. And she
Yeah.
got an 8 and a 9 on the APGAR test. So
Oh,
she was, flying colors. That's still pretty wonderful for the situation. Also, being deprived of oxygen for times here and there throughout. And then
right.
they were able to, when I delivered the placenta, they were able to confirm that there was an abruption there. And
Oh,
they don't know
interesting.
how it happened or what caused it. And me wanting to always know, I've, looked at my pathology report many times and there's just no explanation, which stinks, but it's just one of those things.
Yeah. 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 Fascinating. Well, I'm so glad it turned out so well in the end,
You.
that being so scary in the beginning. So,
Yes.
uh,
Thank you.
and
Thank
thank you
you.
for sharing. I think it's so important to just like hear how these things unfold and the value of going in even when you're not sure.
Yes, that's like wonderful advice I would say to any mother who's pregnant and not sure. I would say there's never anything where you should say, "Oh, I'm bothering the doctor," or "I shouldn't call the office again." Like always, always do that. And that's like proof that, even if, of course, if you're bleeding, that's pretty obvious. But even if there's a little thing, I'd say always get it checked out.
Yeah.
there's no harm in doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So she went to the NICU, and
Yes.
then what was the feeding experience like from that point?
Yes. So, a lot of this is again a little bit of a blur, but so she went
That's
to the
okay.
NICU, and then, we went to the post-delivery room, which isn't as it's a different environment than the labor and delivery floor. So we were in another section. And I remember my husband wheeling me in the wheelchair
Mm,
over to see her in the NICU. They wanted you to, try to feed her.
mhm,
My milk didn't come in the colostrum, right?
mm,
Most people, I think it takes a little bit of time. So I would just like hold her, like have her near me, because
right.
also in the NICU, we're separated. So we're only going to be able to be together for a short time. Then I have to go back to my room and come see her again. So, um, yeah, I honestly can't tell you like exact timing of in the very, very beginning, because it was a bit of
Yeah.
a blur for me. And like the next day I had a couple other like health things that kind of came up. And so we were trying to just make sure we were both okay. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, they definitely wanted to, to before, well, we can even back up even further. So I wasn't ready, right, to have her. So I
Right.
didn't have like the pump yet. I didn't even like have it.
Yeah.
I had a Willow pump, which I wasn't planning to use right away. I was
Right.
planning to use that like later on, but the Spectra, right, one of the kind of traditional brands that everyone gets in the hospital. So I had to like learn real quick.
Yeah.
Because, and again, I was just kind of not even thinking clearly. So it was like a lot of like, okay, here's how all the pieces work in the parts. And I'm just like,
Right.
and let me like measure for the flange size. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's going on? Looking back, I think I wish I were a little more prepared. Like did a little more research with the pumping and like had learned a little more before I went in. And I was actually planning to do a little more of that like closer towards, and that opportunity just didn't happen for me. So
Yeah.
I wish I had done it earlier, but that's okay.
Who knew? Who knew that she would come 5 weeks early?
Who knew? Yeah. But really like I was in the hospital like 5.5 weeks early. So
Right.
um yeah, so I think like, that part I definitely I wasn't ready for all the pumping, because, in all honesty, I thought I would be able to actually to breastfeed her.
Right.
And I wasn't, because a couple factors. Because she was so early, she actually wasn't interested in eating at all in the very beginning. She was really just so sleepy. We really had to, myself and the NICU nurses had to really struggle to even like get her to be awake
Mhm.
often. So that was like the first struggle. And then, when she would be on my chest, she would fall asleep. She had no interest. And when she was awake, she just couldn't get the suction with her mouth. She was just like too
Yeah.
early. And they did a lot of tests for tongue ties and things, and they never found anything. It was just more like she just wasn't there yet. She just wasn't
Right.
that developed. So it was a big struggle. We did some tried with bottles. We tried a little bit with droppers in the very beginning, trying to just get her any little bit um, of colostrum formula, whatever. I
Yeah.
couldn't be there by her all the time, so they used formula right away. They asked me if that was okay, and I said, of course. I want her to be able to have nutrients and whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
But it was definitely very hard, very, very hard. And she was in the NICU for a week. Um, we went home on Sunday, and she was in the NICU that entire week. So we had to go back and forth every day, which was another really,
Wait, from
really
your room or from your house?
from our house.
Oh crap,
Yeah.
they discharged you? Oh dang.
Yeah. So what happened, so I can back up a little bit and share. So she was born on a Friday night. So then Saturday, she's in the NICU. We're at the hospital still, but I was having my heart was racing very fast and it wasn't going down. My blood pressure was a little elevated, and that's kind of like one of those warning signs that's like a red flag. And
Yeah.
so Yeah, I got rushed to get a CAT scan. I had an EKG and they thought I had a pulmonary embolism, which is like really, really not good. But it was a little scary. My parents were visiting, my husband was there, and they're like, okay, we're taking you off. And I was
Oh,
like, "Ah,"
geez.
but it ended up being fine. So Saturday was a
But,
lot of like me also just like, am I okay?
right.
So we saw Ariana as much as we could back and forth. My husband would wheel me in the wheelchair over to the NICU. We'd see her, we'd spend time, we'd try to just hold her. We did a lot of skin to skin. My
That's good.
husband did too. I did. We just tried to be with her. And she was hooked up to monitors because she had to be monitored with her oxygen level, and her heart and her breathing. And so it was just so emotional and so hard to see her. Again, it's just
Mhm.
not like what you envision. When you have a baby, you're like, that's the least thing anyone thinks about, because why would you envision that, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, and then Sunday, I had some tests Sunday morning and I was okay, and they discharged me.
Okay.
So Dan and I went home without Ariana, and that was probably like the hardest thing. One of the hardest things I've had to do up
Yeah.
to this point in my life is just drive home with my husband, and we had this beautiful baby, and but not be with her. So it was very emotional for my husband as well. Like both of us just, um, again, not what you expect. And it was also hard because a lot of people, of course, were so happy for us and like congratulations. And I didn't feel like I could ultimately really be relaxed and celebrate because she wasn't she was okay, but she wasn't okay yet. She wasn't with
Right.
us, and she was
Right.
still being monitored, and I was just a little anxious. And we knew she wouldn't be in the NICU for too long because they told us that they just wanted to make sure um she didn't have any, they called them episodes, where she basically stopped breathing. But when she's
Right.
hooked up to the monitor, an alarm goes up, beeper goes off, and then someone rushes and goes to check on her, right? And I'm just thinking, if we had her home, we wouldn't have one of those. What would we do? So I was comforted in knowing that she was safe where she was. But
Right.
still, it's just the hardest thing because, again, you're going through all these emotions and, postpartum 100%, like day number 3 after having a baby. And then, your
Yeah.
body on a whack and everything, and you're just not with her. So, um,
That's so hard. I remember Luna was a few days old and Hawkeye took her for a walk with a friend and they were gone for like 3 hours and I freaked out.
yeah.
And my therapist actually told me, and I don't know if this is true or not, but maybe it was just to like make me feel better, but that like biologically, it's actually like physically hard for moms to be away from their newborn babies because like, our bodies are like the hormones and things are all like keep my baby alive. And so to
Wow.
be, as like a, you know, growing, like just keeping the population going, like you don't want the mom to like suddenly check out on the baby now that she's born. So yeah,
Right?
that's so hard. I can't imagine. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so glad it was only a week.
It was only a week, and those days felt so long. So what happened
Mhm.
was, my daughter was in the step down unit, which was good. She wasn't in the intensive unit, so we didn't have our own room. We shared a room, and there was like a sheet that you could pull because you try to breastfeed, you try to be with her.
Yeah.
So my mom, who's amazing, would come with me in the mornings at 8 o'clock when we could get there. It was 8 to 8 were the hours. So my husband kept working. We didn't want to use his vacation time until she
Yeah.
came home because I was just there here and there. So my mother would come with me, and then as soon as Dan got out of work at 4 o'clock, he'd drive up. My mom and him would swap out because you could only have 2 people in the room at a time.
Oh,
I'd go home
right.
at 8. So it was very, very intense. I look back and I'm like, I don't even know how I got through this.
Yeah.
Um, so she had one really tough night in the NICU. We weren't there, but they call it like incidents. And so every morning we would hear the rounds from the head of the pediatric NICU. And so he would give us the update. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, I think it was like Monday or Tuesday night, one of the earlier nights on, she had a tough time, but then she was okay for 48 hours in a row. And then she had to pass her car seat test. So she had to sit up in the car seat. And let me tell you, she's a tiny little peanut in that car seat. I look back, I'm like, wow, I don't know how like she didn't like slide underneath those little straps, but
I know it's crazy how quickly they grow once they start really growing.
yep, yep,
Oh, goodness.
exactly.
Have you
So
taken out the car seat of the infant insert yet, or is she's
yes,
still
we
in that one?
have. We
Ah,
have. I'll tell you that the feeding story keeps going, but she's going strong now with her weight and everything. But
nice, nice.
yeah, so those first couple, when we got her home,
Well,
it was
during that
really,
week,
oh, sorry. Yeah.
what was like what was pumping like? Were you pumping at night? Were you pumping at the
Oh,
hospital? How did that all
yes.
unfold?
Yeah. So I was pumping. So I had the pump that they gave me, the Spectra at home.
Yeah.
And then at the hospital, they had the hospital grade one that was like
Nice.
amazing. That was like so much, you like 3 times as much milk, right? With this different
Right.
one, because the pressure and just the intensity. So I would pump. I did this, I really was like pretty much on schedule 8 times a day. So it was like
Wow.
every like 2 hours. And then I had like a little chunk where I tried to sleep more at night.
Yeah.
I gave myself that break. Again, your first baby, you kind of do what the lactation consultant tells you, and you don't really, I mean, you kind of question it, but not really. You're like, okay,
Right.
I'm just gonna keep doing this. And of course, slow going in the beginning for me. I was kind of like, all right, this is like not much, right? And
Yeah.
it was like the colostrum for a while, and like, the liquid gold, right, is what they call it.
Yes.
So I would pump. I mean, I was at the hospital so much. I liked using the hospital grade pump as well. So I would pump as
Yeah.
much as I could there. They had fridges there so I could store everything. I could put our little name labels on it and store it there. And then every morning I would pump like at home. So in the morning I would bring whatever I had there. So because we wanted to
Hmm.
give Ariana as much breast milk as possible.
Yeah.
Compared to, obviously we had to use the formula as well, just because I
Sure.
didn't have enough milk in the beginning. And also I think, and it's probably true, like the formula might be make them last a little bit longer. Like it's more they sleep a
Right.
little bit better, et cetera, et cetera. So we are just doing whatever we could.
Yeah.
So yes, it was a long week of being there at the hospital, pumping as much as I can, and then pumping at home. I would set my alarm too in the middle of the night. That was tough. That was really tough. It was tough the whole
Yeah.
time I did that, but especially in the beginning, without her even there. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
pumping to wake up at my alarm to do this, and my baby's still in the NICU. It's just so many emotions.
Yeah.
But I wanted what was best for her. And so of course I'm going to at least try,
Yeah.
to follow kind of the what the lactation consultants are telling us. And they were great. There were several of them that were in the NICU throughout. So I would ask questions.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. And I've heard, and I might be getting this backwards, but that like, do they do like a bottle test in the NICU where you have to like Ariane would have to confirm that she could drink from a bottle before going home?
Yeah. Yeah. She did okay with that. She was okay. Very slow going. Like we had to use a
Yeah.
super slow flow in the beginning. It's like, and she would drink like the tiniest amount. But that's true. She did have to make sure that she could do that because her breastfeeding skills were subpar. So there needed to be some way that she could you know
Yeah.
have
Right.
have
Make
breast
sure
milk
that,
or
yeah,
formula or
all of it
something.
works. Nice.
Yes,
Nice.
yes,
All
exactly,
right.
exactly.
So you brought her home on Sunday,
We brought her home on
the
that
following
weekend.
Sunday.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever day that
Yeah.
was. Yep, yep.
And what was that like? Your first nights at home and
Oh my goodness, what was that like? Wow. Well, being a planner person that I am, my husband and I made a schedule, right? Because
like,
she had to eat every 2 hours as much as we could feed her because she wasn't eating a lot, but also, she's so underweight. We had to make sure she was fed. So we had a whole schedule. And the first night we woke up together every time. We just said, okay, we're
mm,
gonna do this first night together. I remember there were lots of like high fives and like, we got this. And so
nice.
I was pumping. When we brought her home, we were trying more. We did try here and there, right? As I mentioned, like to have her actually breastfeed in the NICU even, and she just wasn't super interested. But we were like adamant, okay, we're gonna try to make this work. So we did try.
Yeah.
So we would try, I would pump a little bit, then try to have her breastfeed, vice here and there. And she really wasn't super interested. So it was mostly just the pumping and the bottle feeding, and then seeing if she'll take like a little bit of the bottle before she'd fall asleep again. So it was a lot of like really, really struggling to have her take anything at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, so like after those first few nights, moving into the first few months, what was it like? What was challenging? What was joyful?
yeah. So there was a short period when Ariana did breastfeed. It was
Hmm.
like 2 weeks. It was a very short time. And that felt like a success to me because that was
Yeah.
what we were like hoping for, right? That was like the plan, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it. I did go to a lactation consultant outside the hospital, so through the same hospital program,
Yeah.
a couple of times, and they helped with a nipple shield, which ended up helping. They made sure that I had the right flange sizes because I think I had the right one on one side, not the right one on the other side. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was really good for the pumping, for them helping with that too. But
Good.
yeah, so it felt great to have her breastfeed for a couple weeks, and then we kind of regressed, and then she didn't want to anymore. So
Mm.
I went back to the pumping, um 8 times a day,
Oh my goodness.
and it was really hard. It was
Yeah.
really
It's
hard.
exhausting.
It was absolutely exhausting. Like there's no other way to put it. And I think I'm a perfectionist, and so I just wanted to be able to do it 8 times a day and do it right. And um, I remember like I was like, how is there enough time in the day? It's like, how do you have time to pump and then clean the all the pieces, right? Sterilize them and then feed the baby and that all these things. So um, yeah, that was really hard. I called on my husband a lot to help. He was great with doing all the like the sterilizing and washing the pump parts. And I remember
Nice.
watching some hack videos about like just put the pump parts in a bag in the fridge and wash them once a
Yeah.
day, like just little things. And I definitely was like, okay, I'm definitely doing these little shortcuts or tricks. Um, I called on some good friends
Nice.
as Molly.
It's
some
lots
of
of
the
texts.
some of the experts, some really close girlfriends who didn't mind sharing their experiences and being there for support, because it really is huge. I would tell anyone to like use networks, use resources, use this podcast, listen to other people's stories. It really is empowering. It's helpful so that you don't feel like you're alone, and not that you feel like you're alone, but it's just going through a similar experience that is so, like you said, abstract until you actually do it
Yeah.
with someone, or talking about it. It's just incredibly helpful. So I think those, to circle back to answer your question, like some of those moments really felt like, okay, like I can do this. I got this. It was joyful in that sense that like I'm doing the best I can for my daughter, even though it was incredibly challenging at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. I found too, like, like you mentioned the schedule, and Hawkeye and I did this very similar thing. And so there were moments where like I was the only one up with Luna, and like, but I was also had to pump. And so like I was like holding her and pumping, and I definitely spilt milk that way, and I was so pissed. But
First.
yeah, I can only imagine like just continuing to have to do that all the time. And I mean, I did
Yeah,
it for the first 6 weeks, but like, yeah, it's not
yeah.
fun.
No.
Yeah. It's
I
so
mean,
challenging.
6 weeks is impressive. So I ended up pumping for probably like pumping full time for 2.5 months. And then we were having a lot of challenges with Ariana too, and she was like
Yeah.
contorting when she was eating, and it was just like she was not gaining weight. And we ended up finding out through several trials, that she has a
Mhm.
milk protein intolerance.
Oh
So
no.
all the breast milk I was giving her was making her sick
Oh.
because of my diet, right? Because I was not dairy free. And so I started to go dairy free, and it was just going to take too long. So it takes like 2 weeks to get out of your system, but it takes 4 weeks to get out of the baby's system. And we didn't have we didn't have 4
Yeah,
weeks.
that like a month is so long in like a baby's early life
Oh
too.
my gosh, that's like their whole
Yeah.
life, the whole
You're
world,
like,
and
at that point, it's like a third of her life. Okay.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, so do you want me to go into this now, or I don't know if you had other
Yeah,
questions
yeah, go
first?
for it.
Okay. All right. So we were going to actually we were going to the pediatrician like every other day for the first month because she had to get her weight checked because she went down to 4 pounds 11 ounces. And
Hmm.
she didn't get up to 5 pounds for like a month, which was like not great,
Yeah.
but she's totally fine now. But so we went through, let's see, one, two, three different formulas, but we had to use the formula for an extended amount of time because we had to make sure again, like the previous one was out of her system for several
Oh my
weeks, and then we had
goodness.
to, see. So we used a Gentlease formula, and it helped a little bit, and then it stopped working. Then we used Nutramigen, which is a pretty popular formula, like hypoallergenic. That worked for a while actually, and then it stopped working. So then the formula we use now is called Elecare, and
Mm,
it's amino acid based. It's like pre-digested, and it works for her. So she's
great.
been doing wonderful since like early June. So those
Nice.
first several months were really, really iffy. And now it's great. So my only like wish is that so I have all this breast milk because I was pumping still all this
All
time, pumping,
right.
pumping. But I did stop. We weren't sure with her milk protein, so I kept pumping a little bit longer because I didn't want to stop. It's very
Yeah.
emotional to stop to make that decision. It's like here we are, and you never thought you'd be here, but here we are, and this is just the best decision for the family because it wasn't good for
Right.
my mental state, and knowing that she can't drink it right now. Can she ever drink it? So long story short, I have a lot of breast milk still that's in my parents' chest freezer. They don't
Nice.
have room in our freezer. Um, and so I do want her to use it in some way, shape, or form. I can donate it too, which is another option.
Yeah.
But
No, that's
when
cool.
she becomes 9 months old, we're gonna start we're baking it into different products and see if she can take it.
Yeah.
So I don't want all that hard work to go to nothing. But
Yeah. No,
yeah,
it's
but the
cool too that
decision,
you have it in your parents' chest freezer because I've read that they recently extended the shelf life of breast milk. So, like, if it is in a chest freezer, it lasts for like a year now instead of just the 6 months, or at least.
yes, yes.
So
Yeah, they
that's
told me
cool.
a year. Yeah, they told me a
Yeah.
year. So figure if I pumped it in March or April, I still, have
Yeah.
plenty of time. But yeah, I think like again the decision to stop pumping was difficult.
Yeah.
Because again, it wasn't kind of what I envisioned, and I feel like sometimes there's like I don't know if pressure is the right word, but it's more like you just again, I'm a perfectionist. I just want the best for her, and I feel like, oh, I'm giving up, I'm stopping. But really it was the best decision for our family, like what we needed
Yeah.
and where we were, and my lack of sleep, and that kind of, drive my husband crazy, and then we're all crazy. I'm like, this is just not working.
Totally. Totally. But I hear you, especially because it's like such a big part of your life up until that moment, like pumping so
Yeah.
many times a day and like just sort of like this indoctrinated part of like the process. And so to sort of, and again in a way, like be forced into having to make a decision before you were necessarily ready to make a decision, right? Like it was all based on Ariane's time and not like your experience with breastfeeding but hers. So
Right. Absolutely. Yep. And it just teaches you like your baby's in charge. Like you're not in charge anymore. Because I mean, there's
yeah. Yes.
example one, she came 5 weeks early. Example two, she didn't want to breastfeed. It just keeps going and going.
Totally, totally. Yes, she is her own woman. I love
Oh
it.
yeah.
That's awesome. So, you mentioned that your partner was just really good, with helping with the pumping and like with all the parts and things. And how has it been switching to formula? Have you guys kind of like, you know, is you still have a schedule? Is it just whoever's with Ariana at the time? How do you handle it now?
Yeah, I feed her the bottles more often than he does. I really enjoy it. I like feeding
Mhm.
her. I don't know, it's just like our special time together too. Like obviously we can play and stuff, but I love like holding her and just, having her have the bottle. But Dan's great too. Like he doesn't like I always want to do her nighttime feed nights, just our routine. Like, he'll help get her dressed and he'll bring her over to me and then I'll give her the bottle. So I think, yeah, it's more just like, I think it's more my preference. She still wakes up in the middle of the night to feed. And so we will alternate with that though. Usually it's just, knock on wood, once a night. And so I'd say more often than not, it's me, but he jumped in last night because I still was kind of low under the weather. I'm like, can you, get the bottle? And he jumped right up and did it. So, yeah, so I really appreciate that he's willing and able to, I think that is one thing, if you're not breastfeeding, that, well,
Yeah.
both people have equal opportunities if it's a bottle, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That's cool. I know, it was like what, 2.5, 3 months, but what did you have to do any like pumping or breastfeeding in public? And what was it like for you in social situations?
That's a great question. I really never got comfortable in in social situations,
Yeah.
breastfeeding or pumping. I did have like a wrap, and I think I tried it a couple times. Oh, I actually no, I didn't really breastfeed ever in public because she didn't really breastfeed ever. I mean, the most public was like the NICU, but there's people around.
Right.
But pumping, I did have a Willow, so the portable. And so I did use it a couple times, just because if you would go too long without pumping, you'd be like, ugh, painful.
Right.
I never got super comfortable with it. I don't know if it's just me. I mean, some people are just like, driving to work and pumping and like portable ones and like, I don't know. But I think it was just me, probably just my comfort level.
Yeah.
I also didn't leave the house a ton those first couple months. I bet
Yeah.
if I had kept pumping, into months later as the weather
Yeah.
was getting warmer, I probably would have done more in public. She was born in February and it's just cold here in Rochester, New York. And so I really didn't leave the house that much those first like 2.5 months anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cool. And then this is maybe more a selfish question for me because I'm now considering weaning. So when you decided to stop pumping,
yeah.
um, did you do it like gradually? Did you just do a hard stop? And like, what was your experience like? Did you get like milk blisters or bleeds or clogged ducts or, yeah.
Yeah. Great question, Molly. Let's see. Well, I took the sunflower lecithin
Oh,
recommended by
nice.
you actually every day. So that helped with the clogs. Because I did get some like clogged ducts in the beginning. So I think that
Yeah.
just like made that whole process easier. I did it gradually. So what I would do was, I was pumping 8 times a day. So I went down to, I think I was like probably at like 6 or 7 after a while, like, but
Hmm.
religiously. And so I would go down to 5 and 4, but it was pretty slow because for
Yeah.
me, I would just get very clogged and heavy and it would just be very uncomfortable. So I did that slowly. It was a little bit painful, honestly, here and there. I wore like a very tight bra. Like that was one
Mm,
thing that helped with it. And then I also found another close friend from college, Katie, actually. Molly
nice.
knows Katie. Recommended she was breastfeeding at the same time as me. She had her third child, a little before Ariana was born. And she was weaning at the time as well. And she recommended this tea.
Oh,
Think it's called, I can send you the name of it, but it's like
yeah.
pink. I don't know. And it really helped. It had just certain
Nice.
herbs in it that's supposed to help with weaning. So
Cool.
the
I'll put it in the
company,
show notes if you send me the link.
okay, yes, I will. I will. Yep, yep, yep. I mean, I love tea. Like I hear, here we are right now.
Yes. Hey, nice.
Um, yeah, if you're a tea person, this tea was just wonderful. And each bag made 2 cups, and I would have 2 cups a day. And I think, between that and then just very, very slowly,
Yeah.
um, and then wearing a super tight bra. Those were the things that I did.
Nice.
I think you have to be like mentally, again, so a lot of it's mental too, like mentally ready to actually do this.
Yeah. Yeah. No, those are great tips. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Well, before we get into the rapid fire round, so I have 2 questions. One, I'm curious. So Ariana is currently 7 months, but just a little over 5 months corrected, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and I know they say like you can start introducing solid foods at 6 months. So have you
Right.
started or are you waiting until she hits her corrected 6 month date?
Yeah. Great question. So we did start actually. We started about a month ago. So we started with not her, we didn't do her corrected age. Maybe we should have though, because
Nice.
we started with purees and she does not like she doesn't swallow it all. I think she's really just exploratory. She
Yeah.
doesn't like carrots, she doesn't like peas. She's sweet potatoes is okay. She doesn't like bananas, which I thought you might like a banana.
Yeah.
The cereal she's into a little bit. We introduced peanut butter. They say to introduce
Oh,
it early, so just check for the allergies. So
yeah.
she's okay with the cereal, but yeah, I told my husband actually yesterday, like it's gonna be slow going, like slow going. So she'll be having her EllaCare formula for a long time. We'll see. I'll keep you posted.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I think it also helps once they start to get teeth.
Yeah, she doesn't have any teeth yet. So yes, I think that will be helpful
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. All right. So I know you've named a few products that you've used, but are there certain like tips or resources or products in particular that you want to recommend or just shout out again?
Yeah, that tea was wonderful. Let
Mhm.
me find the name and I'll share that with
Yeah.
you. Let me see. I mean, when I was breastfeeding, actually you again, Molly, recommended though these pads that were like cooling like on your nipples,
Oh
and
yeah.
they were awesome too, because the times that she was trying and it was like you're so sore. So those were really good. I think they were the Medela, can't remember
Yes.
the
Like
little
gel
yellow.
pads or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
I'll
that
add
was,
those too.
yeah, I used some coconut oil actually too, like afterward,
Mhm.
just to kind of soothe. Like that was pretty helpful. Um, I don't know. I think that might be all I can think of right now. But if I
No,
think of
that's
anything,
totally cool. And you've
yeah,
mentioned a lot along the way. And I think, to your point earlier, like just continue to ask all your friends and build your network and all the things. Cause like,
yeah,
especially when you're in it.
yes, it's so helpful. And it's interesting because people maybe you haven't talked to, I reconnected with a friend I hadn't seen in 15 years, from a friend
Mm,
from high school at the birthing class, and we had babies at the same time. And so
that's so
it
cool.
is helpful too to have people that are going through the same thing do at the same time, right? I
Yeah.
have like several friends who have children who are like 8 and 10, and like it's wonderful and they can give you such great advice, but it's not the same as someone who's going through it at the similar time. So I would definitely say find a mom group out there. That's another thing too that I would recommend. I did end up
Mhm.
finding a mom group. It was people,
How did you how did you do that? Did you do it through the hospital or
yeah, great question. So I'm actually one of the people who are kind of in their own world and they're not on social media. However, a close friend of mine found a posting on Facebook, and it was called it's called the fourth trimester and beyond. So if you're local
nice?
to Rochester, anyone listening, make sure
Yeah.
you check that out. It was a really powerful group. And so it was once a week on a Thursday morning, and it was I think it was just 6 weeks long, but it was really awesome. So I would say anyway, probably social media wise would be the way to find
Yeah.
a group like that. But yeah, keep those, be open-minded. I'm always someone to try something new. So for me, I'm like, sure, whatever. I'll show up there by myself. I don't know anybody, but if you're not like that, I would just encourage you to be open-minded, because you never know. You never know who
Yeah.
you're going to meet or what resources out there. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing too, just how easy it is having a baby to just like go and with other moms, like just
oh,
talk
yeah.
about your children. It's like an
Right,
easy in. Like if you're feeling
right.
socially awkward, you just
Yep. Yep.
you ask the basic questions. It's
The
good.
basic questions. Yes, definitely. The other resource I found to be really helpful is actually the local library.
Oh,
They
nice.
have a lot of story hours, and like they have baby sensory play, and they're all like free activities, and they're all during the day. So if you're on maternity leave, I connected with some other moms just casually talking with them. Again, similar people going through similar experiences. So that's another resource that could be helpful for anyone who
Yeah.
has like a local library.
Yeah, that's a great idea. All right. We're going to do a little rapid fire section here to end.
All right.
So I'm curious. I know you already told us that you tried a number of foods with Ariane, but I'm curious, what was the first food, if you remember?
The first food we did with her was the oat cereal.
The oat cereal. All
Yes,
right. And are you a morning or a night person?
definitely morning.
And has that stayed consistent well with baby?
Yes, yes.
Nice, nice. And I think you already gave this away, but officially, are you coffee or tea?
Oh, tea all the way. Not like coffee.
Nice. Do you have like a go-to in the morning? Or are you generally like an evening tea drinker? What's your
Definitely in the morning. Sometimes in the evening, depends. Other times I just like to hold something hot in my hands and feel the warmth of it.
yes. Yes. Nice. Nice. All right. What is your go-to recharge activity with
Ooh, going
Ariane?
for a walk outside, fresh air outside. Anything that involves that is definitely my go-to for now. I mean, it
Yeah.
changes with the baby. Can't go on like a 50-mile hike or anything like that.
No.
But
Oh, and do you have a favorite like bedtime story or story that you like to read?
oh, I really love the book The Night You Were Born. It's a little sappy, so sometimes I'm like not in the mood for it. But if I'm in like a oh kind of mood, like that's what I'll read to her.
Nice. Nice. I love that. And what is the one thing your partner can do to help you out that like takes the burden off you a bit or just makes you feel like so appreciated?
Oh, that's a great question. So I feel like tactical, like wash the bottles for me. I hate washing bottles.
Yes.
Like that's huge for me. That's the first thing that pops into my head. But just like generally, just like sharing the burdens in general. And I feel like we're really good at that. And we communicate when one person's feeling like, wait a minute, like, I need a little help here. Can you pick her up from daycare again, even though you did that, these days? And so I think
Yeah.
like the communication and dividing up the tasks, that's what we can do. That's what we can do to help, make me feel like it's
Yes.
not everything's on me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. All right. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share? I know we've talked a lot, so I don't know if there's
Yeah,
anything
I think
else.
we hit everything. I just want to say thank you. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to be able to share stories. I think it's like empowering that you have this podcast that are, asking these questions you might not always think about and giving the opportunity to share and relate to other mamas. So thank you, Molly.
Well, thank you, Carla. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your unique story, like from start to finish. It's been a journey.
Yes, it
So,
has.
yeah, yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I
Bye.